Pull over now. The command from the back seat cut through the hum of the air conditioning like a knife. Through the bulletproof tinted windows of her black Mercedes, Whitney Houston was staring at something that made her forget she was already 30 minutes late for her recording session at New York's most exclusive studio. On the bustling streets of downtown Newark, a young girl was singing like she'd been touched by God himself. And what Whitney witnessed in the next few minutes would shatter everything she thought she knew about raw vocal talent. It was a sweltering August afternoon in 1995, the kind of day when the concrete seemed to shimmer with heat waves, and 14-year-old Keisha Williams was setting up her usual spot on the corner of Broad Street near the old Paramount Theater. The worn piece of cardboard she'd been using for months was fraying at the edges, held together with duct tape that caught the sunlight. Her hand-me-down sneakers were 2 sizes too big, inherited from a cousin who'd outgrown them, and her white church dress had a small stain near the hem that her grandmother had tried to remove with careful scrubbing. But none of that mattered when Keisha opened her mouth to sing. If this incredible story moves you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got more untold stories about music's greatest legends. Keisha had been coming to this exact corner every weekend for 6 months, ever since that devastating phone call when her mother, Denise, lost her job at the phone company. The downsizing had eliminated 200 positions, leaving families like the Williams struggling to keep their heads above water. With her father completely out of the picture since Keisha was 8, and 2 younger siblings at home, Marcus, 10, and little Aisha, just 6, every single dollar Keisha earned from street singing went straight into the family's grocery fund and helped pay the rent on their cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Newark's Central Ward. Her mother, Denise, worked double shifts at a local diner, serving coffee and pancakes from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then cleaning office buildings downtown from 6 p.m. to midnight for barely above minimum wage. She left Keisha in charge of the younger kids most evenings, trusting her eldest daughter to help with homework, make dinner, and keep everyone safe until she returned home exhausted. Denise had no idea that her eldest daughter was spending her Saturdays performing for strangers on busy street corners, risking getting in trouble with authorities or worse. If she knew, she'd probably ground Keisha until she turned 18. But Keisha couldn't help herself. Singing wasn't just a hobby or a way to make money. It was the only thing that made her feel truly alive, the only escape from the crushing weight of responsibility that sat on her 14-year-old shoulders. As she carefully placed her grandmother's old portable radio on the sidewalk, Keisha took a deep breath and looked around at the familiar chaos of downtown Newark. Street vendors hawked jewelry and bootleg CDs. Office workers in tired suits hurried past, talking on their phones. Shoppers moved between the discount stores that lined the street, and the constant stream of traffic created a symphony of urban sounds that had become the soundtrack to her weekend performances. Today felt different somehow. The crowd seemed more responsive. The sun was hitting the pavement at just the right angle, and Keisha had been practicing a new arrangement all week that she couldn't wait to debut. She'd spent hours in the small bathroom of their apartment, the only space where she could practice without waking the neighbors, perfecting her runs and vocal techniques while listening to Whitney Houston albums on repeat. As the opening piano notes of "I Will Always Love You" began playing through her radio, Keisha closed her eyes and let the music wash over her like a wave. She'd studied every single Whitney Houston performance she could find, analyzing the way the voice built emotion, how she used dynamics to tell a story, the precise placement of each run and riff that had made her the greatest vocalist of her generation. In their tiny apartment, Keisha had practiced for hours in front of the cracked mirror, working on her breathing, her posture, the way Whitney connected with audiences through pure emotion. She'd memorized every note, every breath, every subtle inflection that made Whitney's version of Dolly Parton's song the most powerful love ballad ever recorded. But something magical happened when Keisha started singing. The shy teenager who barely spoke up in school, who got nervous talking to strangers, who preferred to blend into the background wherever she went, completely disappeared. In her place emerged a vocalist who commanded attention, who could make time stop and crowds gather with nothing but the power of her voice. The transformation was immediate and breathtaking. Her voice seemed to soar effortlessly through the concrete canyons of downtown Newark, carrying emotions that belied her young age. Shoppers stopped mid-stride, their purchases forgotten as they listened to this young artist pour her soul into every note. Office workers on their lunch breaks found themselves pausing, their sandwiches growing cold as they became mesmerized by the girl who sang like her life depended on it. A crowd began forming in a perfect circle around Keisha, but she was lost in her own world, completely absorbed in the music and emotion. Each note was deliberate, each run calculated, each phrase held for exactly the right amount of time. She wasn't just copying Whitney Houston's vocals, she was interpreting them, adding her own pain, her own story, her own desperate hope into every word. But 10 blocks away, trapped in the typical downtown Newark traffic that moved like molasses, Whitney Houston was getting increasingly frustrated. She was already late for a recording session that had taken weeks to schedule, and the gridlock seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of her small convoy of vehicles. Her manager, Pat Houston, was making increasingly frantic calls to the studio, trying to buy them more time. That's when Whitney heard something that made her heart skip a beat. Her own voice, but performed with a passion and soul that cut through the noise of the city like a laser beam. The sound was coming from somewhere ahead, carried on the summer breeze, and it reminded her instantly of why she'd fallen in love with singing in the first place. "Driver, what's that sound?" Whitney asked, pressing her face against the tinted window and trying to locate the source of the music. "That can't be a radio. Someone's singing live, and they're singing my song." Robert, her longtime driver and trusted friend, pointed toward the growing crowd 10 blocks ahead. "Looks like a street performer, Miss Whitney. Some young person singing your music, and they sound pretty good from here." Whitney squinted through the heat waves rising from the asphalt, trying to get a better look. Even from this distance, she could see that something special was happening. The crowd was growing larger by the minute, and there was an energy in the air that you only felt when witnessing something truly extraordinary. "I need to hear this up close," Whitney whispered, her hand already moving toward the door handle. "That voice, there's something about it." "Ma'am, maybe we should keep moving," Robert cautioned, glancing nervously at the crowd. "There's already a lot of people there, and if they recognize you, things could get complicated pretty quickly." Pat Houston looked up from her phone. "Whitney, we're already 30 minutes late. The studio time is costing us a fortune, and we've got that interview with BET at 5. "No," Whitney interrupted, her voice filled with a wonder that her team rarely heard anymore. "This is exactly where I need to be." Sometimes God puts you exactly where you're supposed to be, even when you think you should be somewhere else. Meanwhile, Keisha was deep into her performance, reaching the emotional climax of "I Will Always Love You," with a series of runs that would have impressed professional backup singers. Her young voice seemed to defy physics as she hit notes that trained adults spent years trying to master, holding them with a control and power that left the growing audience speechless. She was so completely focused on her performance, so absorbed in the music and the emotion, that she didn't notice the black Mercedes that had pulled over at the edge of the crowd, or the woman in the designer sunglasses who was now standing at the back of the audience, listening with growing amazement. The whispers started slowly, rippling through the crowd like waves. "Is that? No way. Someone's recording this. That's really her. Whitney Houston is here. Should we say something? Don't scare her away." But Whitney's attention was completely fixed on Keisha. The way the girl sang reminded her powerfully of herself at that age. The pure emotion that radiated from every note, the complete dedication to the craft that blocked out everything else in the world. The way music could transport you to another dimension entirely. This kid had something special, something that couldn't be taught in any vocal studio or music school. This was raw talent, pure and unfiltered, the kind of gift that only came along once in a generation. As "I Will Always Love You" reached its dramatic climax, Keisha launched into the most challenging part of the song, the soaring high notes that required perfect breath control and emotional commitment. The crowd held its collective breath as the young vocalist pushed her 14-year-old voice to its limits, executing runs and riffs that professional singers spent years perfecting. When the final notes faded and the last echo bounced off the surrounding buildings, Keisha opened her eyes and struck a pose she'd practiced countless times, one hand on her heart, the other reaching toward the sky, her head tilted back in the exact position she'd seen Whitney use in countless performances. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, phones recording from every conceivable angle, voices shouting praise and encouragement. Money began flying into Keisha's cardboard box. Quarters, dollar bills, even a few 20s from passersby who had just witnessed something they'd never forget. But when Keisha's eyes swept across the audience to acknowledge their appreciation, her entire world stopped spinning. Standing there at the back of the crowd, wearing designer sunglasses and that unmistakable smile that had graced 1,000 magazine covers, was Whitney Houston herself. Not a look-alike, not someone dressed up, but the actual living legend. "Oh my God," Keisha breathed, her voice barely audible over the continued cheering. "This can't be real. This isn't happening." Her knees started to shake, and for a moment she thought she might collapse right there on the concrete. The girl who had just performed with the confidence of a seasoned professional suddenly felt like what she was, a 14-year-old kid from Newark who was face to face with her biggest idol. Whitney stepped forward slowly, carefully navigating through the crowd that was now buzzing with excitement and recognition. She removed her sunglasses with deliberate ceremony, revealing those famous eyes that had captivated audiences for decades, and flashed that radiant smile that could light up entire arenas. "That was absolutely incredible, sweetheart," Whitney said, her voice carrying clearly over the crowd noise. "Where in the world did you learn to sing like that?" Keisha's knees nearly buckled. Whitney Houston, the voice, the greatest female vocalist who had ever lived, was not only talking to her, but complimenting her singing. This had to be a dream. In a few minutes, she'd wake up on the couch in their tiny apartment, and none of this would have happened. I I listen to your albums every single day, Miss Houston," Keisha stammered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I practice in my bedroom, in the bathroom, anywhere I can find space. My mama thinks I'm crazy for singing the same songs over and over again for hours." The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to witness this magical moment unfold. Security personnel were already making their way through the people, trying to maintain some order, but Whitney waved them off with a subtle gesture. "What's your name, baby girl?" Whitney asked, stepping closer so they could speak more intimately despite the chaos around them. "Keisha Williams, ma'am. I'm 14 years old and you're everything to me. You're the reason I sing. You're the reason I believe that music can heal people." Whitney's eyes glistened with genuine emotion. This girl reminded her so powerfully of herself at that age. The raw passion for music, the dedication that bordered on obsession, the way singing could be both escape and expression, sanctuary and celebration. But more than that, she could see something in Keisha's eyes that she recognized from her own childhood. The hunger, the dream, the desperate hope that somehow, some way, singing could change everything. "Keisha," Whitney said softly, reaching into her designer handbag, "I want you to have something very special." The crowd fell silent as Whitney pulled out one of her signature microphones. Not just any microphone, but one of the actual ones she'd used during her "I Will Always Love You" recording sessions. The microphone was pristine, carefully preserved, and it seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. People were frantically taking photos and videos, realizing they were witnessing a moment that would become part of entertainment history. "This microphone has been with me through some of my most important recordings," Whitney continued, placing it gently in Keisha's trembling hands. "But I think it belongs with someone who truly understands what it means to sing from the soul, someone who reminds me why I fell in love with music in the first place." Keisha stared at the microphone in complete disbelief, tears streaming down her face. She'd seen this exact microphone in studio footage, in behind-the-scenes videos, in her dreams, and now it was in her hands, real and tangible and impossible. "I can't take this, Miss Houston," Keisha whispered. "It's too important. It belongs in a museum or something." "Music is meant to be passed down from one generation to the next, Keisha. Talent like yours is meant to be nurtured and celebrated. Promise me you'll never stop singing, no matter what obstacles you face." Then Whitney's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration, that spark of creativity that had driven her to become the greatest vocalist of her generation. "You know what? Let's do this together. Would you like to sing with me right here, right now?" The crowd went absolutely wild. This was beyond anything anyone could have imagined when they woke up that morning. Phones were recording from every angle, people were shouting with excitement, and word was spreading rapidly through the neighborhood that something unprecedented was happening on Broad Street. Keisha nodded eagerly, unable to form words. This was the moment every young singer dreamed of, the chance to perform alongside their idol, to share the spotlight, even if that spotlight was just city sunlight, with greatness itself. Whitney signaled to Robert, who quickly retrieved a portable speaker from the Mercedes. The crowd made room, forming a large circle around the two vocalists as anticipation reached a fever pitch. "Let's give these people something they'll never forget," Whitney said with that radiant smile her fans knew and loved. The same smile that had launched 1,000 dreams and inspired millions of people around the world. As the opening piano notes of Greatest Love of All began playing through the speaker, something truly magical happened. Whitney Houston, The Voice, and Keisha Williams, a street singer with a dream, began performing together in the middle of Broad Street in downtown Newark. The transformation was immediate and breathtaking. Keisha, who moments before had been nervous and starstruck, found her confidence again as the music washed over her. She harmonized with her idol perfectly, her young voice blending seamlessly with Whitney's legendary vocals. When Whitney sang the lead, Keisha provided gorgeous harmonies that enhanced every phrase. When Whitney gestured for her to take the lead, Keisha stepped up with confidence that belied her years. The crowd swelled to over 400 people. Traffic came to a complete standstill as drivers abandoned their cars to witness this once-in-a-lifetime moment. Even the Newark police officers who arrived to manage the situation found themselves listening in awe rather than breaking up what was technically an unlawful assembly. For 4 minutes and 15 seconds, there was no superstar and no street performer. There was no difference in age, fame, or bank account. There were just two artists sharing their love of music with the world, connected by the universal language of song. When Whitney sang about children being our future, Keisha's harmonies added depth and richness that transformed the familiar song into something new and beautiful. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous and sustained, echoing off the buildings and seeming to shake the very ground beneath their feet. People were crying, cheering, and frantically posting videos that would be viewed millions of times within hours and become permanent fixtures in internet history. Whitney put her arm around Keisha's shoulder and addressed the crowd with the same presence and grace she brought to sold-out concerts around the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice carrying clearly over the noise, "you have just witnessed something truly special. This young lady has reminded me why I became a singer in the first place. She's shown me that talent, passion, and dedication know no boundaries. Remember the name Keisha Williams. Mark my words, you're going to be hearing it again." The crowd erupted again, chanting Keisha's name as if she were already a star. But Whitney wasn't finished. She turned back to Keisha and spoke quietly, away from the cameras and the noise. Her words meant for the girl's ears alone. "I'm going to give you my vocal coach's personal phone number," Whitney said, pulling out a business card and writing something on the back. "We're going to make sure you get the professional training and opportunities you deserve. A voice like yours shouldn't be performing on street corners. It should be in recording studios and on the world's biggest stages." 8 months later, Keisha Williams stood in a state-of-the-art recording studio in Manhattan, working with vocal coaches who had shaped the careers of the biggest names in music. Whitney Houston had been true to her word in every possible way. Not only had she arranged for Keisha to receive professional vocal training at the most prestigious music academy in the country, but she had also established a full scholarship fund to cover the girl's education through college. Denise Williams, who had been working double shifts just to keep food on the table, was able to cut back to one job after Whitney quietly arranged for ongoing financial support for the family. They moved out of their cramped Newark apartment into a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood where the kids could play outside without fear. But perhaps most importantly, Keisha never forgot the lessons from that life-changing August afternoon on Broad Street. The importance of staying humble, of working hard, of never giving up on your dreams no matter how impossible they might seem. Today, Keisha Williams is a Grammy-nominated recording artist and vocal coach, working with the biggest names in the music industry. Her debut album went platinum, and her name appears on chart-topping singles and critically acclaimed recordings. In her home studio, she keeps that microphone in a place of honor, not as a museum piece gathering dust, but as a daily reminder of the moment when recognition and kindness changed her life forever. Every weekend, without fail, she returns to community centers in Newark, teaching vocal technique to kids who remind her of herself, children from struggling families, kids who sing because they have to, not because they want to. She always tells them the same thing Whitney told her that day. Sing from your heart, practice every single day, and never give up on your dreams. You never know who might be listening. The video of their impromptu street performance has been viewed over 200 million times across various platforms, inspiring countless young singers around the world. But for Keisha, the real magic wasn't captured on any camera. It was that moment when her hero looked into her eyes and saw not just a street performer trying to make a few dollars, but an artist worthy of respect, investment, and belief. Some encounters change lives in ways that ripple out for generations. Some moments transcend ordinary experience and become the stuff of legend. And sometimes when the music is right and hearts are open, magic happens exactly where you least expect it. On a busy street corner in downtown Newark, between a superstar at the height of her fame and a girl with nothing but a dream, destiny made its move. This story serves as a powerful reminder that talent can emerge from anywhere, that kindness has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire families, and that music truly is the universal language that connects us all. Because sometimes the most important performances don't happen on grand stages in front of thousands of screaming fans. Sometimes they happen on ordinary street corners where dreams are waiting to be discovered and lives are ready to be changed forever. All it takes is someone willing to stop, to listen, and to believe in the power of possibility. If this incredible story moved you, subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this with someone who needs to hear about the power of recognizing talent wherever it appears. Have you ever witnessed raw talent in an unexpected place? What's your favorite Whitney Houston memory? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the heart behind music's greatest legends. Remember, you never know who might be listening when you share your gifts with the world. Just like Keisha taught Whitney, sometimes the most beautiful music happens when we least expect it, in places where dreams are born.